Coming up, we're tackling the content machine. Marcus is diving into why the sheer volume of imagery required today is devaluing your craft. We explore the value crisis, the intense pressure of 24-hour turnarounds, and the specific shift you need to make to stop being seen just as another line item on a budget.
Welcome to Commercial Photographer, your guide to marketing, creativity, and growth. This is a podcast that helps commercial, brand, and headshot photographers navigate the competitive world of commercial photography with actionable strategies to grow your business.
Hello, Marcus. How are you doing?
I'm very well, Sam. How's yourself?
Coping. Moving house is quite a stressful procedure. As Marcus can see, it's not the prettiest behind me at the moment.
But you're still in Mozambique, though, aren't you? For our listeners, not quite in the UK yet.
Still in Mozambique. I've shipped a load of stuff to the UK. We're going to be doing dual living between the two before too long.
Dual living. Oh, very nice. Dual passport. Well, the weather's warming up.
They won't give us a Mozambican one, but there we go.
It sounds very exotic, and it sounds lovely, Sam, actually. What a great compromise. So, it's me talking today. And what I'm going to be talking about is probably one of the biggest challenges that commercial photographers are facing right now. And it's not AI. We've done the AI season. We've talked about that. Our listeners can go back and dig into that. But AI does seem to be getting all the headlines at the moment. But when I speak to working photographers and when I run workshops or just talk to people in the industry, the thing that comes up again and again is something much more practical. And it's the V word, Sam. It's the V word. It's value.
Value. So there's all sorts of things we can mean by that. Are you able to quickly summarize it now, or is this going to be you'll explain during the course of the podcast?
Hopefully it will come through. But what I'm be talking about is that clients these days are needing more photography than ever before. And it's not necessarily that they want to pay for it. So in some ways, this is completely understandable in some ways. Businesses today need far more imagery than they did 10 or 15 years ago. Look, think about it. A company now needs photographs for their website, LinkedIn, Instagram, advertising, newsletters, presentations, press releases, and often multiple social media platforms. Where Sam, 20 years ago, a commercial shoot would just consist of producing what we would call a company brochure. Do you remember them?
Yeah, that's it. And it would be simple, wouldn't it? And you're done, and then they probably wouldn't get any photos for 10 years. That would do them, wouldn't it?
Well, it could be, hopefully. It was sometimes there were annual reports, but these were basically... They were just a small amounts of photographs. You go and do a shoot, and you'd be submitting maybe 20 or 30 photographs for these brochures. So now businesses need a constant stream of visuals. And this is really where the tension begins. Because from the client's perspective, they're thinking, we just need some photos for marketing. But us, as photographers, we think the reality is very different. We are, as I said, we used to just supply a few images. Now we have to supply multiple images, multiple crops, vertical versions, square versions, banners for LinkedIn, and sometimes short videos, which is becoming more and more common. So what looks like a small job can quickly become a large volume of deliverables. It's a content machine. And I often describe modern photography as a content machine. Businesses today want on content. They don't need visual. They do need visuals all the time. And in many ways, that's actually good news for us photographers because the demand for imagery has never been higher. But the challenge is that the perceived value of each photograph has dropped. So when images were scarce, they had an enormous value. Now they need hundreds. The business will need hundreds of them every year. And the conversation can shift quickly from quality to quantity. And so for photographers who have been spending years, like myself, developing their craft, understanding light, whatever, composition, that can sometimes feel frustrating.
Marcus, sorry to interrupt, but we need to mention the webinar that's coming up. It's about not competing on price, so it fits with this show so well. So our webinar is all about helping you not stop competing on price and become a premium photographer. There's input from Marcus and me and time for questions and answers, all happening on the second Thursday, the 2nd of April at 10:30. To book your space, it's dead easy. You just go onto the Commercial Photographer website and you can book there. Couldn't be simpler. commercial-photographer-podcast.com. From there, there's links to the webinar. Sorry, Marcus, carry on. So that can be quite a challenge. So is that a lot, Marcus, about getting the client to understand what you're providing, but also you get them to understand, the value that you're giving and getting them to understand that?
Yes. Yeah. It's a tricky one. I mean, back in the days, in film, as I said, on corporate brochures, the photographs you were delivered less and they had more value. But these days, the more you deliver, the less value it becomes, especially as they think, I can probably do this for myself, some of this myself on a phone. But anyhow, it's not all bad news. But let me just talk a little bit about the speed side of things, the delivery, because that's where another big change is happening. Photographers used to have a bit of breathing space built into the process. You would shoot, edit carefully, make selections, refine the images. But now the expectations can be incredibly fast. Shoot today, images tomorrow. In fact, Sam, tonight I'm doing an event. I know I'm going to have tomorrow morning, want the images delivered because they want to get them out on the social media. So speed is becoming a preference. And when everything becomes about speed, it can start to feel like you're producing content on a conveyor belt rather than crafting photographs. So let's talk about photography as craft versus photography as content. So what we're really seeing is a shift from photography as craft to photography as content. Businesses are thinking in terms of content production. Photographers are thinking in terms of image making, and the two perspectives don't always align. But there is a positive side to this. The photographers who seem to be doing well right now are the ones who move up the value chain. Instead of positioning themselves, is that word again, simply as photographers, they position themselves as creative partners, visual storytellers, brand photographers, or visual strategists. Sam, we've talked about this before extensively on different shows, I know.
Yeah. So it's about that, getting across the real value you're adding and doing that with your position.
Yeah, exactly. So businesses need to understand how imagery supports their brand and their marketing. So when you start having that conversation, the relationship with the client changes. It's no longer just how much for some photos. It becomes how do we visually communicate this brand? And that's a very different conversation. So in branding photography, this is why it's grown, I feel, so much. Brand photography isn't just about taking a set of pictures. It's about understanding the business, the audience, and the message the client wants to communicate. Then creating imagery that supports that story. So when photographers do that well, they stop being seen as simply a supplier and become much more of a creative collaborator. And that usually leads to better work and better projects. So again,
that presumably also often is also recurring. So, somebody who is a photographer, you get them in, they do a photo and they go. Someone who's a collaborative partner is more likely to be referred to, you're talking to, is more of an ongoing conversation over time and are providing images over time.
That's exactly right, Sam. And take the event tonight. I'm looking at it, not just documenting an event. I'm looking how I can add branding value to that. So I'll be looking for logos that I can incorporate, whatever it might be. It might be lit or photographed in a way that would suit their brand. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm not thinking about it as an event photographer. I'm actually putting on my branding photographer hat on and approaching it that way. So if you're a commercial photographer feeling some of this pressure, more deliverables, faster turnaround, tighter budgets, you're certainly not alone. The industry has changed, but the photographers who adapt by thinking more strategically about the role of images in business are often the ones who build the most sustainable careers, just like you just said, Sam, because ultimately businesses don't just need photograph, they need visual communication. And that's where photographers still bring enormous value. And just to redefine, to finish this, Sam, the interesting question for photographers today is, are you producing content or are you helping businesses communicate visually?
Excellent.
So there, yeah.
Interesting point to finish on.
That. Thank you. Thank you. I think you just got to go that extra mile these days, Sam. It's a very competitive industry. Budgets are shrinking, but nevertheless, there's opportunity out there.
Yeah, and presumably as well, there are some options, like you said, you have to provide images this way. Sorry, we're on a podcast. I'll stop waving my arms around. Square and portrait and landscape and everything. But does that not also mean that it looks like you're producing a lot of you're providing a lot of images, and actually you've just provided 6 versions of the same thing? So in some ways, that can work both ways a little bit.
It can, but you have to shoot it differently, Sam, especially for like this 16:9 vertical. You have to really consciously think, how am I going to shoot this? You can't just
so you're not talking about just cropping it. Okay.
No, okay. Definitely not. And, again, when I speak to my clients, do you want this predominantly landscape, predominantly vertical? Where are you going to be using this? And that's all part of that, it's helping their businesses, but also it's helping me not ending up with photographs that are wholly cropped by the client,
Yeah, which can be a terrible mess, can't it, after you've spent all that time doing them. And then I was also going to ask about that, people wanting photos right away. So, I mean, my thought is there's a couple of ways of approaching it. I mean, is one way just to give them a selection right away, to go, right, let's find, 5 key images from the event, and let's get those sorted, deliver in the morning and then deliver the rest later? Does that sort of thing work, or do they tend to just want everything right away?
It both work, Sam. You're quite right. With some clients, they're going to want images like a recap at the end of the day that they want to put on a slideshow the next morning, or if it's like a multiple day event. But generally, within my contract, I say I deliver 48 hours the images, and I always try and do it in 24, just to give a little bit of an extra little boost to at that last touch point with the client. And it doesn't take long, to edit and cull. You can get AI culling, I know, these days. But you just go through. You just think, don't allow yourself too much time, and just do it. And when you're shooting, bearing in mind you've got to edit it, and just don't overshoot, really.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing, I was chatting to Fabrizio on the last show, and she was talking about outsourcing the editing. So in some ways, if you've got an outsourcing,
I did hear that.
The other side of the world in a different time zone, that could work well in terms of you finish the shoot, you're coming kind of going to bed going, I've done the shoot, I'm exhausted. You hand it to them, getting up, they can effectively do all that work while you're asleep, and you next morning, and there you go.
That's very true, Sam. I never thought of that, actually. I have outsourced images before when it's a rather complicated cutout or something very repetitive. I do like to edit myself, and I do listen to that show. And of course, there's different ways of doing it. I'm pretty quick with the old capture one at getting things done, and choosing images. So I edit myself, but you're right. That could be something that you can use to your advantage.
That's it. And especially if the editors are on the other side of the world in the opposite time zone, often the rates are quite competitive as well.
Oh, Sam, the rates are very competitive. Yeah, sure. If I had a bit more of a business head on me, I'd be definitely outsourcing it. I'm just butting in to remind you about our webinar. If you're a photographer who's looking to get more premium clients and charge higher prices, this is for you. It's going to be on the 2nd of April at 10:30 a.m. GMT, and you can book on via our website, commercial-photographer-podcast.com. AI isn't the biggest threat in 2026. It's the V word, value. I know what it's like. Clients want a content machine, but they're squeezing your margins harder than ever. So today, we're talking about how to break the quantity trap and stop being treated like a disposable supplier. Let's talk value right now. Sam, it's about moving from image making to visual communication. So here are the 3 takeaways from today's show. The content machine reality. Businesses now need hundreds of images for a digital-first world, shifting the focus from the old company brochure model to a high-volume demand. Secondly, moving up the value chain. To stay profitable, you must move beyond being a supplier. It's about shifting the client conversation from how much for some photos to how do we visually communicate this brand. And finally, speed as a service. Speed is now a core requirement, with 24-hour turnarounds becoming the standard. Utilizing strategic shooting and even global outsourcing can help you meet these deadlines while keeping your commercial photography business efficient. Great stuff. Fantastic. Thanks, Sam.
Cool. Well, thank you, Marcus. See you next week.
See you next week.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. If you want to make sure you never miss a show, head to the website commercial-photographer-podcast.com and sign up to the newsletter. We'll be back next week with more practical advice to help you grow your business. See you next time.